let's go. All right, so tell us a little bit about yourself and your family law experience.
Yeah, well, first of all, good to be here, Nick. I'm a senior family lawyer with MKI Legal. I've been working almost exclusively in family law for about 17 years. I think I'll be 18 years post-admission towards the end of the year.
Okay.
Long time.
Yeah. So today we're going to be talking about property settlements and how people who've separated, people got divorced, divide their assets and debts as well. So I think a good place to start is, how is doing a property settlement different to, say, divorce? Because a lot of people get that confused.
So yes, so to answer your question, in a legal sense, divorce just refers to legally dissolving the marriage. So divorce and the divorce process is separate from the process of dividing the assets and finances, which is commonly referred to as property settlement.
Yeah, because my understanding, all a divorce does is just end the marriage, so it allows you to get married again, or that you're no longer married to that person.
Exactly.
It just changed. It's just a relationship status change.
Yeah, it's pretty much a procedural issue.
Yeah, but it can have important consequences. For example, if you pass away, it's going to be it's going to be an issue, because if you're still married to someone and you don't have a will, then that person might inherit your assets if you're not divorced, or they might get your super. So there are a lot of consequences. So divorces are important.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah. Look, no dispute. So I'm not saying divorces aren't important, but I guess the point I want to make is just because you get divorced, that obviously doesn't mean that you've sorted out your parenting arrangements. If there's kids under 18, it doesn't mean you've sorted out your property. Those are separate steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we want to get into, the property stuff today. And so in terms of, just give an overview of someone who's just separated, thinking, well, how do I split everything up? How does this thing work? And this is Australia-wide, by the way, even though Jeff practices in WA, the system is the same all around Australia. So any listeners and viewers anywhere in Australia, this will apply to you. So start with an overview if you could.
I think a good place to start is to make the point, and again, I'm just addressing a lot of misconceptions that people have that I hear all the time.
Yeah.
And people hear this misinformation at barbecues or at the water cooler or wherever it is they hang out. So the first thing I wanted to debunk is this idea that you have to be separated for 12 months before you can start sorting out the finances. That's crap. Mm-hmm. Once you're separated, you can start sorting out the property and finances. That 12-month thing that people get confused about, all that's about, and there's a few 12-month issues. Mm. The first one I'll just quickly address is you can only get, sure, as you know, Nick, you can only, obviously you've never been divorced, and hopefully that won't happen. But you can, if you were to get divorced, is your wife going to see this? I hope not. If you decided to get divorced, then you can do so, but only if being separated for 12 months, right? But that's just for divorce. So anyway, to answer your question, let's say a couple, not you of course, splits up. As soon as they're separated, they can start sorting out finances, they can start sorting out parenting arrangements for kids under 18. And the 12 months, they only have to wait 12 months to be able to legally divorce. Now, what does the process entail? First of all, in large part, it depends on the other party. Is it amicable? Is it a nightmare? Is it messy? And look, what I hear a lot of when I ask people, how's it going with your ex? I guess there's three main options, right? Is it amicable, nasty, or a bit up and down? And 9 times out of 10, the answer I get is, it's a bit up and down.
Yeah.
It's normal. It's a very hard and grueling process for people to go through. A lot of emotions, grieving the end of the relationship, anger, bitterness, resentment. There's a lot of stuff to work through.
All right, so let's just kind of at a high level give an overview of just I'll kind of give an overview of how I understand property settlements to work. So, husband, wife, husband, de facto. wife, separate, and then you really, when you separate, you can start sorting out the children's stuff. So the children's stuff really means, okay, how much time the kids spend with each person, with each parent, and then you can start sorting out the financial stuff. And the financial stuff is really about, okay, how do we divide all the assets of the relationship? Who gets what? How's everything split up? How's the super split up? How's the house split up? All that kind of stuff. So that's what we refer to as property settlement, right? Dividing and untangling your lives. And that step, that property thing, is what we're going to focus on today in this interview. Let's talk about if someone's in the stage of just separating, right? They haven't really done anything. They got all their finances tangled together. What's some stuff that can some advice for someone who's just separated about dividing their property and process?
Well, the first thing I would advise, and I expect watchers or viewers or listeners are going to say, well, he would say that, but this, I can speak to that, and that is get legal advice and get it early. So yeah, obviously I expect people...
Why get legal advice? Yeah, I mean, people will be suspicious of a lawyer saying, get legal advice.
Yeah.
Come to me, I will help you, but why are you saying that?
I think that's a smart and sensible thing to do, because part of it is just getting educated about what your rights and your entitlements are. And it's important, time is of the essence, so it's important to do that early so that you're on the front foot. So you don't end up like a lot of people I see who, and naturally, I'm not criticizing, it's perfectly understandable, it's all too hard, so people stick their heads in the sand and they don't come to me until it's sometimes too late, or the whole thing's just escalated out of control.
Okay.
So my advice is, before it escalates out of control, get some advice so you know what sensible and proper steps to take next.
Okay, and advice you don't have to go see a lawyer. You can go get research online. You can listen to podcasts, and hopefully this podcast we want to explain. You can go to community legal centres. You can give legal aid a call. There's a whole bunch of ways to get advice, but to find out about the process on how everything works, right? Because it can be complicated, right?
Yeah.
How does the law determine who keeps what in the relationship, and what's a fair split?
Yeah. So a good starting point is for us to acknowledge that, unlike other countries, it's not automatically 50-50. Also, and again, this is a misconception I hear from time to time, people think the woman automatically gets 70%, and that is also untrue. It's not automatically anything. How it's divided and how the court or family lawyers decide who gets what, that's determined according to a 4-stage process, or a 4-step process that family lawyers and the courts follow to determine entitlements and the divvying up of assets.
Yeah, and so divvying of assets mean how do you split super, how you split mortgages, how you split the equity in the house.
Yeah, how you split everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Right? Just break down the 4-step process, just high level.
Yeah. So step 1 is working out the asset pool. So just like identifying, a nice way of putting it, which a family court registrar phrased it this way, which I thought was nice, is you're figuring out the size of the cake, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So that means?
And so that means identifying what are the assets, what are the jointly owned assets, what are the assets owned by, Joe Bloggs and by, David Bloggs or Jill, whoever it is. So figuring out what each party owns and figuring out their debts.
And everything goes into the property pool.
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. It's assets you brought into the relationship, assets you have now, everything that's either of you own.
Yeah, pretty much. Sometimes people, they say, oh, look, I own such and such before we got together, so can I exclude or quarantine this from the asset pool? No, you can't.
Okay. So step 1, just make a big list of everything that you both have.
Yeah, that's right. So, and again, I might be going off track, and that's why both parties, or spouses or whoever, de factos, have a duty of disclosure. You've got to disclose everything to each other, and if you end up in court, everything has to be disclosed to the court.
So duty of disclosure, and I want to break down some of the law here. Duty of disclosure means you just have to be really honest and open with what you have.
Transparent, all cards on the table.
You can't go hiding stuff. You can't.
No playing silly buggers.
Yeah. You can't not tell the other person what you have, or trying to manipulate the value of assets, trying to hide assets, trying to do anything dodgy, right? So there will be consequences if you kind of get caught doing that.
That's
right.
right.
Step one.
Step one, so size of the cake. So once you've tallied everything up, total assets minus total liabilities, that's your net asset pool.
Cool. Right? And in a standard relationship, we're just trying to give examples, but you might have a mortgage, you might have a house, you might each have your own bank accounts, you will have your super.
Yep, car each.
You might have some debt on the car, loans, you might have some credit card debt,
that's right.
Furniture,
content, jewelry, tools. Yeah, so classic mum and dad case has all that stuff.
Right. You might have a business interest, you might have some shares, stuff like that. Include all that in.
Yeah.
Step two.
Yeah, now step two is we assess contributions. Okay. And there's three types of contributions we look at, which I'll go through in a moment. But essentially, based on these different types of contributions, we come up with a percentage split of the net assets. So we look at financial contributions. We look at homemaker and parent contributions, so that's raising kids and doing all the homemaker things like cooking and cleaning. And the third type of contribution we look at is what are called non-financial contributions, and that's pretty much everything else. Can be any non-financial contributions, includes things like making renovations and improvements to the home. It can include working in your partner's business for no wages, bookkeeping, managing household bills and expenses. Those are the main.
Okay, I want to break down step two as well, because the court looks at contributions. Okay, so are you trying to say that the court looks at what effort you both put into the relationship? So financial contributions means really you're looking at how much money you earned. Your wages, right? Homemaker contributions looks at raising the kids, chores around the house, cooking, cleaning, maintaining the garden, all that kind of stuff, right? The non-financial stuff. And then the third contribution is a non-financial contribution.
Non-financial contribution.
And you gave a few examples. So the court looks at just...
so stage two, you assess the contributions.
You look at who brought assets into the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and so that raises an important point. So I've identified the three types of contributions. The other part of this is we look at, as you say, what each person brought into the relationship or marriage, so what we call initial contributions.
Okay, so they could be you brought in money.
Yeah, or someone owned a house. Or the other thing I hear from time to time is, my loser ex brought nothing except a bunch of debts,
Yeah, so debt, you can bring debt in and then your lovely partner helps you pay it off, helps you manage it.
And that's a contribution, exactly. So we look at initial contributions.
And just because I want to get examples of super, house, credit card debt, you're looking at what you brought in, assets and debt, right?
Yeah.
This is more really relevant for people like second relationships as well. Like if you're, you've had a relationship before, and then you build up some assets, and then you start another one. That's really important.
Yeah.
But if for initial contributions, if you both started out with nothing, you both started out with similar debt or no debt, not really a lot of assets then.
No, exactly. So people who marry young or get together young, that's normally what I hear, which is, we started living together when we were 21. The most I owned was a futon and a bong, right? So...
Yeah. So it just depends. So we've got initial contributions, we have financial contributions, we have homemaker and parental contributions, and we have non-financial contributions, which is like that catch-all thing.
That's right. And just what I wanted to add to that, Nick, is we look at what each person brought into the relationship when they started living together. So the initial contributions. We look at contributions during the relationship and marriage. And we also look at contributions since the date of separation, because that's an important point. Because, for example, people split up, but once they've split up, there's still someone paying the mortgage, there's still someone raising the kids, still someone running the shop or the business or whatever. Okay. So it all gets taken into account.
And it's not, I think it's also important to know, this is not like, this is a high level analysis, really. It's not like counting every single penny that you made, right? Can you just explain that? So it's not about accounting for every dollar you made during the relationship, accounting for every day that you did what, this is just, because no one, marriages last 20 years, 10 years, no one keeps a daily log of their contributions in the relationship, because that would not be normal. But so this is just kind of high level bird's eye view, right?
Yeah, that's right. And you try and be sensible about it. And again, a lot of it's going to depend on how much the parties can agree. So if they can agree on what each person's role was, then that just makes life easier for everyone. Otherwise,
for example, you can agree that, okay, maybe person one made most of the income, person two raised the kids and did most around the house. That could be a traditional. That happens quite a bit. Agree on that?
Yeah, exactly. So speaking to that, so I guess the traditional arrangement in Australia is that hubby is the primary breadwinner, mum is the primary homemaker and caregiver for the kids, and then 9 times out of the 10 people say non-financial contributions mostly equal. Now, I'm not saying that applies across the board. I'm just saying that's the classic traditional setup.
Okay. In that traditional example, and it could be very different, but we don't want to gender stereotype, but in that example.
Yeah.
So one person has a higher financial contributions, they earn more, one has raised the kids and does around the house more. How does that weigh up against each other?
Well, that's a good question. And in answering that, I run the risk of being too complicated. So I'll do my best not to go down that rabbit hole. I mean, the family court or the federal circuit court takes the view that often if someone's out there building a career, earning an income, they're able to do that in part because of the homemaker's contributions, looking after the house and raising the kids, because that frees them up to go out and be the breadwinner. You know what I mean? So we must not discount or undervalue the contributions of the non-breadwinner. They are important, they are significant. Because put it another way, if it wasn't for the non-breadwinner's contributions, well then the one who's out there earning would have to pay for childcare and a cleaner and a housekeeper, and you know what I mean?
I read somewhere that if you value the amount that your parents, your mum or your dad spent raising you, and you put a financial figure on it, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars every year.
Yeah.
If you were paying someone to be your mum or be your dad, right? It would cost you like $100,000 a year.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, absolutely.
Like based on normal, hourly minimum wage. So it should not be discounted. All right, so let's go on to step 3 now.
Yes. So before I get into step 3, Nick, I just want to say, for the sake of this example, let's say that the percentage split based on contributions, which is stage 2, let's say it's a 20-year marriage and the split is roughly 50-50, right? Just as an example. Stage 3, this is where we look at, I guess, what we commonly refer to as the party's future needs. There's a technical term which is, section 75(2) factors, or if in WA there's another section we can refer to which applies to de factos. Again, not going to get overly technical here. So we look at future needs. Now, what does that mean? It means we look at this long list of factors to determine how each party's going to go about, I guess, supporting themselves post-separation, after the end of their marriage or their relationship. So I call them future needs factors.
Okay, so let's kind of break down just before. Step one is so step one is you're looking at
the asset pool, the size of the cake.
Size of the cake. Step two is you're really looking at all the stuff during the relationship, right? And at the start of the relationship. So contributions. So in terms of timeline, it's like step two is really the start, who brought what in, what happened during the relationship. That's kind of step two. And step three is like looking after the relationship ends, looking into the future and what each person's life is going to be after separation. Is that kind of...
Yeah, kind of. And, if we continue and extend the cake metaphor, stage two contributions, you could look at that as who provided the ingredients to make the cake, right?
Okay. All right. Then how? And then what's if you look at the cake metaphor, then future needs.
Yeah. So that's what I'm struggling with.
Who ate the cake? Who stole the cake? I don't know.
Ultimately, right at the end of this 4-stage process, we're going to cut the cake and
well, that's true. Divide the cake. Okay.
And are we going to cut the cake in half, or is it going to be 60-40? Anyway, we'll get to that.
But step three, okay, future needs. So you're looking at everyone's life. So what are some examples of future needs? What stuff is relevant to take into account?
Yeah, there's a long list of future needs factors. I won't go through all of them.
But the main ones.
Yeah, so the main ones, the parties' ages.
All right, so explain that. Why is that important?
Yeah, and again...
And use examples. Like, I think...
The
thing that comes to mind is, like, say if someone's, like... It's an age disparity between you, right?
Yeah, that's
say
right.
if someone is a sugar daddy or a sugar mummy, right? They're a bit older, and someone's a bit younger, then the sugar daddy or the sugar mummy has less time in the workforce, right? Less time to earn income, where someone younger has more time to I don't know if that example is appropriate, but
that's pretty much it. Yeah. So age is an interesting one. Again, I guess like with most things in the law, if you dig deeper, everything runs the risk of being very complicated.
Yeah.
And I know that's not what we're trying to do here. But yeah, basically if someone is, say, 20 years younger than their MILF or sugar daddy or whoever.
Or DILF. It's a DILF.
DILF, yes. Then, yeah, you could say that they have 20 more years in the workforce to build a career, earn an income, therefore their future needs might be less in terms of age. And yeah, but I could provide a counterexample to that, but I won't because that's going to overcomplicate it.
Yeah. But age, and the other thing about the law, and this is really interesting getting into law, is that the family court has a table of your life expectancy, right? So there are all these stats that say if you're 35, statistically you have 52 years left or 50 years left. If you're 50, you have this many years left. So that's why age comes into account. It's like, how long is your life left? And how much...
Fuck, man. Yeah, you're bumming me out.
Yeah, they're putting a financial figure on...
I'm in my early 40s, man.
I looked at mine and I'm 35 and I have 50 years, so...
Oh, man.
Anyway, so that's why. It's like... The age, that's one thing. Yeah.
Age, yeah. So following on from age, we also look at health.
Okay, break that down.
Yeah. So health could be a significant future needs factor. Say if someone if they're sick or they have a bunch of medical issues, that might mean that the medical expenses, their health issues might also impact or affect their ability to work and earn an income. That leads on to other future needs factors, which is income, earning capacity, financial resources. Now, what do I mean by financial resources? Well, it could mean that you have an inheritance on the way, or a compensation payout, or you're the beneficiary of a trust fund. Financial resources can cover any number of things. Usually the most significant future needs factor of all is care of children under 18. So who's going to have primary care of the kids? Or is primary care not an issue because they're going to have a shared care arrangement? And then the other future needs factor is whether someone's receiving child support.
Okay. And caring, sometimes you might also have care for people like dependents that are
Yes.
that are over 18 but they have a disability, or you just need to care for them, elderly parents and stuff like that. So I'm breaking future needs now. You look at it in a way where it's like a stage where the court looks at, okay, when you're dividing the cake, what's everyone's life going to look like moving forward? Are they going to be caring for, have all these financial obligations to pay for childcare? Are they be earning less than the other person? This other person's earning more. This person's got a health issue, so that means that they get some adjustment in their favour of the cake, a little bit more of the cake to accommodate for the health. So that's what you're doing at this step, right? You're just working out, is there any kind of special considerations for either party that gives one party an advantage over the other, if I can put it as advantage, when you're dividing the cake? That's really is that kind of what it's about?
Well, it shouldn't be, but
advantage or disadvantage is that probably.
Well, we live in a cynical world, Nick, and so look, there are people who try and game the system to obtain some form of advantage. So, for example, the classic example is the guy who goes out and quits his job and decides to be on the dole until the divorce blows over. You know what I mean?
Okay, so that is it. So what that guy is doing, from breaking that down legally, is that example, that dodgy dude is trying to say, look, family court, look, federal circuit court, my future needs are quite high because I don't have a job. So,
but what I would add to that is, one, it's transparently ridiculous. Don't do it. Two, sure, you might be able to say, oh, look, Your Honour, my income is nothing. But we also look at earning capacity. We could say, oh, look, as before he did this, he was working FIFO on the mines, earning 180 grand a year. He has the capacity to earn that, but he's choosing not to because he's being a fucking idiot.
Yeah, well, people might. Yeah. So, is it the idea of the future needs to kind of to help in the adjustment of the cake, to take into account relevant factors that are really pluses or minuses, to decide your kind of percentage of the cake? Yeah.
So I would frame it that way rather than frame it in terms of
advantage or disadvantage.
Yeah. Okay. Because that's cynical and that's
it's like a plus or minus adjustment. It's like, okay, and there's some examples we look up a little bit in family law is like, if you have a health issue that you need extra expense, you might get a 5 or 10% plus in your favour. If you have to raise the kids more than the other person does, say for example, you might get a plus 5% or 7% in your favour. These are all figures that could. If you have a much higher capacity earning income, you might get a negative 5 or 10%, right? If you have a lower income earning capacity than the other person, you might get a 5 or 10% adjustment. These are it's like a mathematical kind of formula in that third step.
Yeah, so the idea is if one party has greater future needs, that they get a percentage adjustment in their favour. Now, I'll just make a couple of points about that. First of all, there's no exact science, as to the size of that adjustment. For example, there's nothing in the Family Law Act that says that if the wife has primary care of 2 kids under 18, then she automatically gets a 10% adjustment. It doesn't work that way. A lot of it's you using discretion and the vibe, man.
Which vibe?
Maybe not the vibe so much.
But it's there's some accuracy to it. With family law, there's a lot of it can come down to how the judge feels. It's just this sounds about right. There's no exact mathematical formula.
No, exactly. And part of the discretion and using your judgment, or the judicial officer using their judgment, is you look at the size of the asset pool, right? So if it's a tiny asset pool, well then, obviously there's not much at stake. There's probably not worth arguing over it too much. But if it's a massive asset pool of, say, $10 million, then there may not be a need to do a significant adjustment because it's already a huge asset pool, and you know what I mean. Both parties are going to be reasonably well looked after.
Yeah.
So anyway, again, as is the case, most of these things, it depends on a variety of factors. But the other point I wanted to make about stage 3 future needs is sometimes what happens is there's no adjustment at all. Either because the parties' future needs factors are quite similar, or they cancel each other out.
All right. So that's part of the formula, this overall legal formula dividing assets, stage 3, future needs. Anything else on future needs you think important?
I think we've covered the main things. So again, if we say in this example, this fictitious 20-year marriage, contributions 50-50, let's say, again, traditional scenario, wife has a lower income and earning capacity, greater care of the kids who are under 18. So let's say we give her a 10% adjustment to take into account her greater future needs. So in this example, after 3 stages, what we're looking at is potentially a 60-40 split in favour of the wife.
Okay. Step 4.
Fourth and final step is simply to review the percentage split you've come up with and to make sure that it's fair.
Okay.
And because the family court or the Federal Circuit Court has a duty to make property orders and financial orders that are fair. The legal term is just and equitable, but that just means fair.